Retail investor interest in data software firm Palantir is strong, and joining me now to tell us all about the company is its Chief Operating Officer, Shyam Sankar. Thanks for joining me today, Shyam.
Thanks for having me, Ali.
Okay, so Palantir generates some 60% of its revenue from government agencies, counterterrorism efforts. Can you tell us a little bit more specifically about what those applications are?
Yeah, certainly. We work across a breadth of applications in government. Probably what we're best known for is working in defense, and we have a huge role to play in the war in Ukraine right now, and really providing AI-enabled platforms to go from identifying targets to taking those targets off the battlefield and eliminating the threat. But we do so much more in government as well. We help the IRS catch fraudsters. We help the FDA approve drugs and oversee drug safety, the CDC to oversee epidemiology and epidemic outbreaks. And we've been doing that since 2012. And so there's broad applications to software that really at its core helps you bring together large amounts of disparate data that both exist within your institution, but also potentially across institutions in government, and then put that in a simple interface for humans to make decisions with. How do we allocate the next PPE or vaccine as we think about the spread of the disease? How do we monitor for early signals of drug safety? How do we make decisions on the battlefield at the speed of war?
So how is Palantir harnessing the power of data and also AI to help drive those decisions, would you say?
The real thing that we think about is working backwards from the humans who are making those decisions. So as we look across the breadth of experiences we had, we built the vaccine supply chain in the US and the UK in 5 weeks flat from a dead start. You couldn't have anticipated the need for that, but when you need it immediately. We powered the Afghan non-combatant evacuation operations, NEO operations as they're called, with 24 hours notice. And so you think about the exigent events that are happening in the world, how quickly we're responding to those events, of course, the war in Ukraine. And what we see there is the opportunity to react to reality, to help our customers bring this data together, make decisions that reflect the questions that they have of the world. What are they unable to do? And recognizing that no decision happens in isolation, that really the answer to one decision is the input to the next decision. So how do we connect these things up so you're not making decisions in a vacuum? You're not clouded by what in the military people call the fog of war, but that you can understand the consequences of what's going to happen and respond in real time.
Right. So with the military and intelligence applications, do you think in the consumer's mind that there is that connection to the surveillance aspect? And how should we be thinking about that? And how difficult is it to sort of thread that needle to really go that extra mile in making these discoveries and coming out with great solutions and maybe not overstepping?
I think the real lesson of what's happening in Ukraine here is that David is beating Goliath with a slingshot. So what is every company's slingshot? So your war as code, that's winning. So how can you use that same approach, that same technological framework to win every business battle that you're fighting? And that's what I think people are really realizing and taking away is that these fights are asymmetric. It's not about who's spending the most money on software. In fact, it's about who's doing it most intelligently, who's operating in the most decentralized fashions with the most amount of visibility and running circles around their adversaries, whether that's on the literal battlefield or in the business battlefield.
So how are then the applications being transferred to other industries that Palantir is really looking to make inroads in, like the medical sector, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. When you think about the big challenge since the pandemic is the disruption to hospital operations, whether that's the NHS in the UK, the Canadian centralized healthcare system, or the US. And there are massive backlogs of procedures. People are not getting the care they need. We have scarce operating capacity. You can't just make hospitals overnight, right? So how do we get people the care they need? And this is a logistical problem. It's kind of structurally very similar to a manufacturing problem. So you can ask different questions, whether it's a supply chain or in the government what they call a kill chain. The key thing is to ensure there are no missing links.
So I feel like there's a lot of talk right now about the tech industry and how it's working with government. How do you make sure that the solutions that are being provided make sense for consumers and the general population out there with maybe some areas that it could be difficult to navigate?
Well, I think the relationship between tech and government is one that's worth studying and really going back to. And I was recently reading Chip Wars, which is a great book about the history of the semiconductor industry that takes us all the way up to the present geopolitical conflict. And one of the things I really took away there is how innovative Bob Noyce was with Fairchild and Intel, and how much of their R&D they did at their own expense in the service of the government. There was at some point, I think, the space program was 95% of all chips sold in the 60s. And of course, now the government is a small fraction of that. And so how does the leading edge needs of the military, of the government, of national security drive innovation? We see a consistent theme of that, whether it's the integrated circuit, which really gave birth to Silicon Valley, its origin, whether it's drone technology, whether it's high-end computing, and we see that right now. We see there's a lot of co-innovation that's happening, where how do we predict where the pandemic's gonna spread is built on things that we learn in government, but equally, things that really materially matter to the government are first developed in the commercial world.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the competitive landscape in the data software industry and what makes Palantir stand out.
I think 2023 is going to be a very interesting year for the competitive landscape in the data industry, in particular because I think a significant global recession is coming if it's not already here. And so when that happens, people really have to, the tide goes out, people take stock of the investments they've made, and they ask them, which of these investments am I ready to go to battle with to survive and hopefully thrive in this global recession? And I think there's going to be a big shakeup there where people are looking for software that can be implemented quickly, that delivers results very, very quickly. And they're going to move away from things that are a little more mimetic, a little more, I'm doing it because everyone else is doing it. And so watch this space in 2023.
So speaking of the recession, like you said, companies are going to be making really tough decisions. So harnessing data software that can really help unlock efficiencies. Tell me about that.
The key opportunity for data software companies right now are going to be software companies that can deliver results quickly to the line of business. And anything that is a multi-year project, not going to happen, of course. And then there's going to be a cultural aspect. So some companies, look at the Ukrainians. They are heroes. That's the requisite precondition. Then you put software in their hands and they can be highly successful. Which companies are full of heroes and not bureaucrats? Which companies are not going to put their heads in the sand when this recession comes and they're going to say, you know what? I'm going to make hay right now. I'm going to innovate. I'm going to come out of this recession being the leader in my industry. And those are the folks who are going to be the right, perfect sort of customer to invest deeply in transformation with.
So back to Palantir, and since we are talking about investors here, let's talk maybe a little bit about the financials. So Palantir does rely on government contracts. Do you see any sort of lumpiness to that? Is that impacting revenue? Is that maybe why there's this expansion to other markets? Or what are the thoughts on really what is going to help drive growth at the company?
For better or worse, we are a very product-focused company. We've spent the last 2 decades just maniacally investing in building the software that we thought had to exist to solve these problems in the world. And so when we think about the markets we're entering, it's really from that perspective of what are the big, audacious problems that we can solve, that we uniquely can solve, and where can we invest in R&D that will continue to put us far into the future and meet the needs that are there, that are going to come. And so when we think about that, that's how we think about the landscape there. And I think yeah, absolutely. Government, we have large customers, large contracts. A consequence of that is they're lumpy. We also have lots of small customers, and that's growing here. But we continue to focus on where can our software do the most amount of good, and how quickly can we get it into the hands of the people that need it most.
What would you say, as Chief Operating Officer of Palantir, is your biggest goal for the year? And as we kick things off, thinking about what is to come, what would you say is the most important initiative you have going on?
The 3 things that I'm most excited about is really thinking about your business as code. The agility. You look how quickly are the Ukrainians reacting on the battlefield. Look how quickly people are reconfiguring their supply chains. I don't mean literally turning your company into a software company, but how can you make changing your company, reconfiguring, reacting to reality as simple and as easy as pushing new code out there. And those are the technologies we're really investing in. And the application of that to defense is AI enabling the kill chain. We're encouraged by the results that we see in Ukraine, and we think there is a massive amount of deterrence to provide to Western adversaries by continuing to roll this out, both in the US and abroad. And then the third thing that I'm really spending a lot of time on is Apollo, which is our software delivery infrastructure. Autonomous software delivery. How can I bring and automate the CI/CD process across lots of heterogeneous environments? And bringing that capability to every company is going to help them model their business as code.
Well, Shyam, thank you so much for a very enlightening discussion today. It was a pleasure.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching Investors Business Daily on YouTube. If you want to watch more videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.